I never imagined that a celebration meant to honor 40 years of my parents' marriage would become the night they tried to steal everything from me. Under the glow of chandeliers and polite applause, I watched the people I loved most reveal who they truly were. My father, Thomas Whitaker, smiling like a benevolent patriarch, my mother, Margaret, resting her hand on my son Noah's shoulder as if he already belonged to them. My ex-husband, Eric Dalton, standing by their side, perfectly comfortable. That evening wasn't just another lavish party. It was the final move in a plan I never saw coming. If I hadn't listened to my daughter Grace when she whispered, "We have to leave now," I would have lost more than my inheritance. I would have lost my son. This is how my family betrayed me and how my daughter saved my life. My name is Lauren Whitaker. I'm 34 years old, a mother of two, and until that night, I still believed in second chances. After my marriage ended, I tried to rebuild everything from the ground up. I found a small apartment, took freelance design jobs, and learned how to smile when people pitied me. Most days, I felt like I was just barely holding things together. But I kept telling myself it was enough. Enough to prove I wasn't the failure my parents had always hinted I would become. Even in the quiet moments, packing lunches, folding clothes, I felt their judgment like a shadow behind me. They never said it outright, but I knew they thought I'd ruined my life by leaving Eric. Still, part of me hoped they could love me for who I was. Grace was the only person who saw the truth before I did. At 16, she carried an intuition I couldn't always understand. She noticed details, small gestures, quick glances that slipped past me when I was too tired to look closely. When my parents called or sent gifts, she watched my face carefully, searching for the hope I tried to hide. Sometimes she would say things that unsettled me. "They look at you like you're broken, Mom." I would force a smile and tell her she was imagining it. I needed to believe their kindness was real. Grace never stopped paying attention. She didn't trust easily, not even the people who were supposed to love us unconditionally. She was polite around my parents, but always quiet, observing every word. When I asked why she seemed distant, she would shrug and say, "I just don't think they care about you the way you want them to." I should have listened. Noah was only 8, too young to understand the currents beneath our lives. He adored my parents without question. My father, Thomas, took him fishing and taught him how to skip stones across the lake behind their house. My mother bought him books and toys I could never afford. When Noah came home from their visits, he was full of stories about all the special things they did together. He never noticed how their smiles faded when I walked into the room. Sometimes I envied his innocence. Other times it scared me. He was so trusting, so eager to please. He didn't see the difference in how they treated him and Grace. He believed every promise, every compliment. If I'd been honest with myself, I would have admitted that my parents were already trying to shape him into something I couldn't control. And I was too tired, too desperate for peace to stop them. From the outside, the Whitakers looked like the kind of family people envied. My father built his real estate company from nothing. He was respected, admired, even feared in some circles. My mother perfected the role of elegant hostess. Every holiday, every event she arranged down to the last detail, flowers, seating charts, menus chosen to impress. Growing up, I believed if I just followed their rules, I'd earn their love. But their affection was always tied to achievement, to appearances. When I married Eric Dalton, they were thrilled. He was polished, ambitious, everything they valued. For a while, I thought that marriage made me worthy. I thought I'd finally become the daughter they could be proud of. I didn't realize then that their approval was conditional. The moment I stopped fitting their vision of success, their loyalty slipped away, replaced by something colder, something that would one day turn against me completely. I met Eric Dalton at a charity gala my parents hosted. He was confident and smooth, the kind of man my father respected instantly. Our relationship moved fast. Within a year, we were engaged. My mother said it was the smartest decision I'd ever made. My father called Eric an asset to the family. At first, I believed I was happy. Eric said all the right things. He wanted children. He supported my small ambitions in art, as long as they didn't interfere with his plans. But after the wedding, his charm began to fade. He became critical in small ways: how I dressed, how I spoke, how I parented. By the time Grace was old enough to notice, I had learned to swallow my discomfort. I told myself every marriage had rough edges. I told myself I could fix it if I tried harder. I didn't know yet how wrong I was. Over the years, Eric's criticism turned into control. He started managing our finances without asking. He decided where we vacationed, which friends we saw. When I tried to push back, he reminded me how much my parents had invested in us, as how disappointed they'd be if I made trouble. I stopped bringing up my worries. It was easier to pretend nothing was wrong than to face their judgment. When Noah was born, Eric seemed to soften for a while. But after a few months, he drifted again, working late, avoiding conversations. Grace noticed everything. She asked me why Dad never looked at me the way he looked at his phone. I told her he was just tired. Inside, I felt myself shrinking. I had lost the ability to trust my instincts, to believe I deserved more than a marriage held together by fear and convenience. I found out about Eric's affair on an ordinary Tuesday. He left his tablet on the kitchen counter, still logged into his messages. I wasn't looking for anything. I only meant to check our grocery lists. But then I saw her name, Zoe Mitchell. I scrolled through weeks of texts, photos, plans they'd made together. I felt my heart stutter in my chest as if it couldn't keep up with the truth. That night, I waited for him to come home. I asked him directly, hoping for a lie I could almost believe. But he didn't deny it. He just looked tired, annoyed that I'd discovered what he called a distraction. He said it was over, but I knew better. When I told my parents, they were sympathetic in their careful, distant way. My father offered to help with the legal advice. My mother simply asked, "What did you expect, Lauren?" The divorce was cold and efficient, exactly how Eric wanted it. He kept the house. He kept most of the savings. I was left with enough to rent a modest apartment and cover the children's expenses for a few months. My parents never told me outright to forgive him, but I could feel their disappointment every time they looked at me. To them, I'd failed. I hadn't been strong enough to keep my family intact. Grace never blamed me. She stood by my side while I signed the papers, her small hand gripping mine so tight it hurt. Noah didn't understand. He asked why Daddy wasn't coming home anymore, why I cried in the kitchen at night. I told him everything would be okay. But I didn't know if that was true. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living a lie. After the divorce, I tried to piece together a life that felt like mine. I found an old apartment with creaky floors and peeling paint. I took on freelance design work and a part-time job at a small gallery downtown. Some nights I lay awake counting bills, wondering how long I could keep us afloat. My parents started calling more often. They sent gifts for the kids, invitations to Sunday dinners. Part of me wanted to believe this was their way of showing love at last. Grace wasn't convinced. She watched me unpack the boxes. They sent new clothes for Noah, expensive toys, and said quietly, "They're trying to buy you." I brushed her off, too tired to question kindness even when it came wrapped in expectation. I thought maybe if I tried hard enough, I could still earn their respect. I didn't see the trap waiting behind their generosity. When my parents announced their 40th anniversary celebration, I wanted to believe it was a chance to start over. They sent a formal invitation embossed with gold lettering. My mother called the next day, her voice warm but measured. "It would mean so much to have you there, Lauren. Bring the children." Grace looked skeptical when I told her. She asked why we had to pretend everything was fine. I told her because sometimes that's what family does, pretends until it feels real. I spent weeks preparing. I couldn't afford a new dress, so I altered an old one, stitching the seams late into the night. Grace hovered in the doorway, watching me pin the fabric. "You know they're not doing this for you," she said. I smiled like it didn't hurt, because deep down I still hoped she was wrong. The morning of the party, I woke before dawn, my stomach tight with dread I tried to ignore. I ironed Noah's shirt and helped Grace smooth her hair. My mother had sent an emerald dress for Grace, insisting it would bring out her eyes. Grace held it up like it was something dangerous. "Do I have to wear this?" she asked quietly. "It's just for a few hours," I said, fastening the zipper. "It will make Grandma happy." Grace didn't argue, but her eyes told me exactly what she thought. When I stepped into my altered dress, I caught my reflection and almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like a woman trying too hard to belong somewhere she no longer fit. As we gathered our things, I felt a strange chill, as if some part of me already knew this day would change everything. The Oak Ridge Country Club shimmered under the summer sun. White roses lined the walkway and strings of lights sparkled overhead. I took Noah's hand as we climbed the steps. Grace lingered behind me, her gaze sweeping over the elegant facade. Inside, the ballroom glowed with polished silver and crystal. A string quartet played softly in the corner. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests with practiced warmth. My mother kissed my cheek lightly. Lauren, you look comfortable. She turned to Grace, her smile sharpening. And don't you look lovely in that dress? My father barely acknowledged me. He scooped Noah into his arms, beaming. There's my boy. I saved you a seat next to Grandpa. For a moment, I stood there, clutching my purse, feeling like a stranger at my own family's celebration. I told myself to endure it. Just a few hours. Then we could go home. The room filled quickly with familiar faces, relatives, business associates, friends. Everyone was smiling, laughing politely. I moved through the crowd, accepting condolences about the divorce with practiced grace. It's been challenging, I said, but we're adjusting. Then I saw them, Eric and Zoe, arriving at the entrance. They looked prosperous, confident. Eric's tailored suit was sharp. Zoe's blonde hair cascaded over a designer dress I could never afford. My stomach clenched as I watched my parents rush to greet them. My father clapped Eric on the back like an old friend. My mother complimented Zoe's dress. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to look away. The warmth in their greetings was a knife twisting deeper into my heart. I glanced at Grace. Her eyes were narrowed, her body tense. She knew what I hadn't yet fully seen. Grace grabbed my arm, her voice low and urgent. Mom, we need to leave now. I stared at her, confused and alarmed. Why? What's wrong? She shook her head, glancing around nervously. I'll tell you in the car. Reluctantly, I nodded, swallowing the knot forming in my throat. We slipped away from the party unnoticed by the crowd. As we walked to the car, Grace's face was pale but determined. I wanted to ask more, but she held up a hand. Not yet. Just trust me. That moment changed everything. Her instincts would save us both, even if I didn't fully understand the danger yet. Back inside, the celebration continued as if nothing had happened. Crystal glasses clinked. Servers moved silently between tables, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. Laughter echoed softly beneath the chandeliers. I stayed near the bar, nursing a glass of wine I barely tasted. My eyes searched the room for Grace and Noah. Noah was easy to spot, clinging to my father's side, his face bright with excitement. Thomas smiled proudly, his hand resting possessively on Noah's shoulder as he introduced him to important guests. Grace was harder to find. She hovered at the edges, polite but distant, watching everyone with sharp eyes. I realized then that this party wasn't a celebration for all of us. It was a stage one where my family played their roles perfectly, hiding the fractures beneath the surface. Later that evening, I slipped away to the restroom, trying to steady my nerves. In the quiet hallway, I nearly bumped into Aunt Julia. She looked worried, glancing over her shoulder. I've been meaning to talk to you, she whispered. There are things you need to know, things about your father and Eric. My heart raced. What kind of things? She lowered her voice. Financial arrangements, property transfers, custody plans. It's worse than you think. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Are they planning to take Noah from me? Julia nodded slowly. Be careful, Lauren. This is bigger than a family dispute. Before I could ask more, my mother appeared, pulling Julia away, but the warning stayed with me, heavy and sharp like a blade. When I returned to the party, Noah was no longer by my side. Instead, he sat between my father and Eric, laughing at something Eric showed him on his phone. My mother stood nearby, her smile wide and approving. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. Throughout the evening, I watched how they positioned Noah as if he were a prize to be displayed. Photos were taken with them flanking him, their hands resting possessively on his shoulders. Grace caught my eye, her expression serious. I've noticed how they're trying to rewrite our family, she whispered. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew the truth was far more painful. The room darkened as the slideshow began. Images of my parents through the years flashed on the big screen, smiling faces, grand vacations, elegant parties. But something felt wrong. I noticed the pictures carefully excluded me. Grace appeared only twice. Noah was front and center, often flanked by my father and Eric. It was like they were rewriting history. My heart ached as I watched our family story being erased, replaced by a version where I barely existed. Grace squeezed my hand, her eyes asking if I saw it too. I nodded slowly, realizing that the battle for my family's truth was already underway and I was dangerously close to losing. My father stepped forward, raising his glass. 40 years ago, your mother and I made a decision that shaped our family's future. He began, his voice steady and commanding. He spoke about legacy, sacrifice, and the need to protect what had been built. His eyes flicked toward Eric, then to Noah, and finally to me, his expression unreadable. We are taking steps to ensure the Whitaker name and assets remain secure for generations to come. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some confused, others approving. Grace stood suddenly, her hand slipping into mine. "I need to check something," she whispered, then disappeared into the crowd. In that moment, I knew the true meaning behind my father's words and the fight that lay ahead. Grace vanished into the crowd, her face tense and unreadable. I called after her softly, but she didn't turn back. Panic started to rise in my chest. Where was she going? What had she seen? I scanned the room, asking a few guests if they'd seen her. No one seemed to know. My mother approached, offering a tight smile. She probably just needed some air, but I knew better. Grace was chasing a truth I wasn't ready to face. As the celebration continued around me, I felt more isolated than ever, caught in a family drama I didn't fully understand, with my daughter leading the way. I found Grace in a quiet corner, speaking with Aunt Julia in low, urgent tones. Their faces were serious. No room for the usual polite smiles. I approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt, but needing answers. "Is everything okay?" I asked softly. Julia glanced at me, then at Grace. "We were talking about some things your father and Eric have been planning," she said carefully. Grace looked up, her eyes sharp. "There are documents, legal papers about transferring property and changing custody. They don't want you to know." My heart pounded. "How did you find out?" I whispered. Grace hesitated. "I saw the papers when Grandma made me study in Grandpa's office." The weight of betrayal settled heavily between us all. Grace told me how she had sneaked into my father's office during their last visit. She found a briefcase left unattended and peeked inside, her hands trembling. There were stacks of legal papers, property deeds, trust documents, custody petitions, all marked with red flags and notes in my father's handwriting. She took pictures with her phone, careful not to make a sound. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she showed me the images. "This is why they've been acting strange. They're planning to take everything, our home, Noah, even my future." I felt a cold fury rise in me. They weren't just controlling, they were trying to erase us. Grace's bravery was the only thing standing between us and losing everything. Grace had more than photos. She'd hidden a small voice recorder in her pocket during the party. She played a clip for me, the voices clear and cold. "My father trusts Eric to handle the transfers," my father said. "Lauren's too unpredictable. This is for the family's good." Eric's voice followed, smooth and calculating. "We need to secure the house and adjust custody. She won't see it coming." My mother chimed in, dismissive and cruel. Lauren's emotional. "This is necessary." Tears blurred my vision as I listened. They were planning against me, against my children, with no care for the damage it would cause. Grace's evidence was my lifeline, proof that their love was a lie. I sat in stunned silence, the recording playing again and again in my mind. How had I been so blind, so trusting? The family I had longed to belong to was plotting to take everything from me, my home, my children, my dignity. Grace looked at me, her eyes fierce yet filled with sorrow. "Mom, we can't stay here. We have to fight." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of strength ignite inside me. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming my life and protecting the family I loved on my own terms. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with Grace, going over every piece of evidence she had gathered. Emails, photos, recordings, all proof of the plan to steal from us. We whispered, careful not to wake Noah, as we made a list of what to do next. I felt fear, anger, and a fierce determination mixing inside me. For so long, I had sought my parents' approval. Now I realized approval wasn't worth losing myself over. With Grace by my side, I was ready to fight for my children, my home, and my future. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, I contacted Aunt Clara. She was the family member who had been estranged for years after a bitter fight over inheritance. I hesitated at first, worried she might not believe me or want to get involved, but when I told her everything, she didn't hesitate. Clara had lived through the same kind of manipulation from our father. She shared stories of how he had used public family events to silence her, strip her of her share. Her voice was steady and resolute. "You're not alone, Lauren. I'll help you." For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Together, we would face the family's secrets and fight to protect what was rightfully ours. Clara warned me to be careful. She told me how Dad's control ran deeper than I imagined. He isolates, labels, and divides, she said. He paints anyone who questions him as unstable or greedy. Her words hit hard. It was exactly what I had experienced, what Grace was now facing. Clara urged me to keep detailed records and never confront them alone. She explained that public family events were often used as traps to force compliance. Her own story had ended with her losing everything, but she was determined that I wouldn't suffer the same fate. Her support was a lifeline in a sea of betrayal. Together, we began to plan a path forward. With Clara's help, I started organizing everything: photos, recordings, messages, emails. I created a timeline of events showing how my parents and Eric had worked together behind my back. Each piece of evidence told a clearer story of control and manipulation. I hired Jennifer Reeves, an attorney without ties to the Whitakers, to review the documents. Jennifer didn't flinch at the family names or power involved. She said, "You have a strong case. This is about protecting your rights and your children's futures." For the first time, I felt I wasn't fighting alone. Grace stayed by my side, gathering proof with determination and courage beyond her years. Together, we prepared to face the battle ahead. I stood in front of the mirror, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't just a legal fight. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my family. I thought about Grace's courage, Noah's innocence, and the future I wanted to build for them. I promised myself I wouldn't let fear or guilt hold me back anymore. No matter how hard it got, I would fight not just for what was mine, but for what was rightfully theirs. I was no longer the woman who quietly accepted control. I was a mother ready to protect her children at all costs, and this was just the beginning. Sleep became a stranger as the days passed. I spent long nights reviewing every document, replaying conversations, and planning my next steps. Grace sat beside me, often falling asleep with her head on my shoulder. Despite the exhaustion, there was a growing fire inside us, fueled by justice and truth. Each new piece of evidence strengthened our resolve. I began to understand that fighting for my family meant facing not just my parents, but also my own fears. For the first time, I saw myself not as a victim, but as a warrior. And with Grace leading the way, I knew we could win. One sleepless night, I reached out to Aunt Clara again. We spoke for hours, sharing stories and fears. She reminded me that I wasn't the first to face this kind of betrayal. Her experience gave me strength and a clearer path forward. Clara urged me to document everything and warned me about my father's tactics. She said he would try to isolate me, make me question my own reality. Her voice was firm, a steady anchor in the storm. "I've seen it before, Lauren. Stay strong, stay smart." Her words stayed with me as I prepared for the fight ahead. With Aunt Clara's advice, I met Jennifer Reeves, my new attorney. Jennifer was sharp, experienced, and completely independent of my family's influence. She carefully reviewed all the evidence Grace and I had collected. Jennifer assured me we had a strong case to block any property transfers or custody changes. She warned that Eric's financial resources and my parents' influence would make this battle difficult. But she also emphasized the importance of protecting my children's well-being. Together, we mapped out a legal strategy, one that prioritized truth and fairness over family politics. For the first time in months, I felt cautiously hopeful. This was the beginning of reclaiming our lives. Following Jennifer's advice, I arranged to meet Eric at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop. I brought my phone, recording the conversation for protection. At first, Eric denied everything, claiming misunderstandings and exaggerations. But when I mentioned the evidence Grace had collected, his tone shifted. He admitted my parents had approached him about securing the family assets and custody plans. He said it was about protecting Noah's future. I looked him in the eye and told him I wouldn't be manipulated or silenced. For the first time, I saw a flicker of respect, or maybe fear, in his eyes. That meeting marked a turning point in this fight for my family. Grace stood firmly beside me through it all, her courage never wavering. She attended every meeting, spoke up with clarity and honesty. Her evidence was key to exposing the truth. Watching her grow stronger gave me hope I hadn't felt in years. She reminded me that we were more than victims, we were fighters. Her resilience became our shield against the weight of betrayal. I realized then that this battle wasn't just mine, it was ours. Together, we would rewrite our family's story on our terms. The day finally came for the confrontation. My parents, Eric, and I sat in a sterile conference room, tension thick in the air. I laid out every piece of evidence, the documents, the recordings, the photos. Their faces shifted from disbelief to anger to silence. Eric avoided my gaze. My father's jaw tightened. Then Grace stood up calm but firm. "You lost us when you decided to erase who we are." Her words echoed in the room, breaking the silence. For the first time, I felt we had the upper hand. The fight wasn't over, but we were no longer powerless. For too long, my parents' silence had been a weapon. But in that room, the truth broke through the carefully constructed facade. My mother's eyes flickered with anger, but she could no longer deny the facts. My father tried to assert control, but Jennifer's calm interruptions kept him in check. Eric shifted uncomfortably, no longer the confident man I once knew. Grace's courage had shifted the balance. They could no longer hide behind their power or influence. We were claiming our truth, and nothing could silence it now. After hours of tense discussion, Jennifer laid out the terms clearly. All inherited property designated for me would remain under my control. Both Grace and Noah would have equal standing as beneficiaries in the family trusts. Third-party trustees would replace my father to ensure fairness. Visitation rights for my parents would be supervised until trust could be rebuilt. My father's protests fell on deaf ears as the legal weight of the evidence prevailed. Grace's final words echoed in the room. "We're here to protect our family, not tear it apart." For the first time, boundaries were set, boundaries that promised a future on my terms. 6 months later, our lives had begun to heal. I bought a small house for Grace, Noah, and me, a place where we could build our own memories. Grace blossomed, freed from the weight of secrets and fear. Noah adjusted slowly, his confusion eased by honest conversations and family therapy. My relationship with my parents remained complicated, but boundaries brought peace. Eric stepped back, no longer a pawn in their schemes. With Aunt Clara's support, I found strength I never knew I had. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. We were no longer defined by betrayal, but by resilience and love. Looking back, I realized how much I lost and how much I gained. I learned that family isn't just about blood or legacy. It's about who shows up for you, who tells the truth even when it's hard. Grace's courage saved us both. Her instincts were right all along. If this story speaks to you, remember to trust your gut. Protect those you love even when the odds feel impossible. And know that sometimes the greatest strength comes from standing up to those who should protect us. Thank you for listening. If you've faced betrayal or found your own courage, please share your story below. We're stronger together.